Hi everybody, this is Megan Garza with Megan Garza Wellness. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, health coach, and yoga instructor, and you're listening to the Restoring Balance podcast. More women than ever are now dealing with digestive, hormonal, and skin issues and are not finding satisfactory answers or results. On this show, I teach you how to implement holistic lifestyle, dietary, and mindset strategies to help you get smooth digestion and balanced hormones to reclaim your health, feel confident about your decisions, and to finally live life on your terms. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 29, and the title of today's episode is Body Dysmorphia, Inside Perspective with special guest Luis Garza. Before we get into today's episode, if you're a fan of the show, this is just a reminder of how you can support the podcast by giving it a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcast, which helps my show get to other listeners who would benefit from it just like you. So in this episode, I'm bringing on special guest Luis, my wonderful husband. He's an Army veteran who served from 2006 to 2010 and got medically discharged due to injuries sustained during deployment. He's also a kidney cancer survivor and is now working on pursuing his master's in history and living his life to the fullest despite the challenges and obstacles he's faced. Today we'll be discussing his challenges with body dysmorphia and how it's impacted him, the stigma around it, and especially from the male perspective. So thank you so much for showing up to this podcast episode and for being willing to talk about body dysmorphia. I know that there's a lot of stigma around it, especially from the male perspective and for men dealing with this. So I appreciate you being willing and vulnerable to talk about such a difficult topic. So would you like to introduce yourself and share anything that you would like the audience to know and just anything in general about your story with body dysmorphia? So I'm going to open up the floor for you.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me to your podcast. My name is Luis, and I've been suffering from body dysmorphia and weight issues my whole life. I clearly knew I had the weight issue, my whole life, but I never knew that body dysmorphia, the psychological part of it, was haunting me up until probably, I was 37 or 30, maybe even 38 years old. I'm currently 38, which is profound. I always thought that my mind was just playing tricks on me, or I was just feeling sorry for myself, or, things like that. It also doesn't help the fact that, when you grow up in an abusive family, you have family members that call you fat and fat POS and things like that, of that nature. It really sticks with you after a while. And hoping I can help people out understand, because like I said, it just now got to me that it is a psychological issue now. Not a physical, well, yeah, I guess a little bit physical, but depending on what you put, what you eat or whatnot. But yeah, hoping to help you out, get the word out to other men, because our pride is one thing that is hard to get over.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know this is not an easy thing to talk about. There is just a lot of stigma around it, and I'm very glad that you are willing to open up about it. And I know it has not been an easy journey for you, but I'm really glad that you're really starting to understand how much of an issue that this can be, because it's very easy for us to downplay the severity of things. And you being willing to accept that these things are not normal and they need to be worked on is a very huge step, and you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have some questions for you. So how do you feel talking about this? Is it scary? Is it difficult? Does it feel natural?
Well, like I mentioned in my introduction, now I'm more comfortable with it. Like I said, it took 38 years for me to finally get over it, but for the longest time, if anything was brought up about weight, it would upset me, or I would shut down, or I would react in very aggressive ways to stop the conversation, or even just walk away. It's pretty aggressive, very aggressive. It takes one little thing, something simple as of like, oh, you shouldn't be eating that because ... and my mind will go crazy. Like, it'll just completely start telling me horrible things about myself. And I would say my biggest enemy is the mirror.
That's very interesting that a simple comment about your food intake or what you're eating can set you off, and how it can really impact you for a long time. And how long does that impact you when someone makes a statement, even if it's out of a place for them truly caring about your well-being?
It could be anywhere from days to weeks. Well, I mean, like I said, something that my brother said years ago that lasted a lifetime,
Hmm.
and it still does. Even to this day, when I make progress or I feel like I look good or I think I look good or whatnot, or my mind's like, finally feeling okay, I'll hear the echo of "you fat POS," and that completely derails me. But it's very hard to deal with because of just how aggressive it is. Like, it's always there. It's a mental disorder. It's literally a mental disorder. It's no different than the depressed person, the alcohol. It's an obsession too,
Mm.
I feel. Maybe that might be another way of putting it. Like, I just obsess over it and it does not like stop.
So it feels like it's something that's just more constant.
Oh yeah, it's always there on the conscience, and you start to feel bad for yourself too. Like, is like, man, I am a fat POS. I shouldn't be eating it like this, or maybe I should go work out more, or maybe I should, There's always something I should do more of, but it's always the same result. So
Hmm.
pretty much insanity at the end of the day.
So it just keeps cycling
Oh
no
yeah,
matter what.
very aggressively too. And I'm pretty sure I do suffer from the eating disorder. You know the name of it? The
Binge eating
binge eating
disorder.
disorder. Oh yeah, because like especially when I'm depressed, that's another issue. I mean, maybe that might be two separate
Hmm.
issues, but like I don't know if they're linked or not.
They are, yeah.
So there you go. And then of course there you go. So you have that issue of you eating obscene amount of food because you're sad or depressed, and then you go kick yourself in the butt because I look horrible or whatever. It's
Hmm.
it's a vicious cycle that is hard to break.
It seems like it's very easy for you to get caught in a loop. In the terms of describing body dysmorphia, how would you personally describe it, and what afflicts you the most?
I would say the mirror and the scale. Like I said, I've always had issues with weight. So anytime I see like say 195 or 200 pounds, I freak out because I'm like, why do I always have to be this? Like, why have I always weighed so much? But then you have to understand that everybody's different. Some people are skinny, some people are bigger. Doesn't mean you have to be obese. Clearly, a lot of obesity is created on yourself of what you put in your system. Like I said, I'll be in front of a mirror. And it doesn't matter if there are 10 women around telling me, man, you look great. You look amazing. I will literally destroy myself. And just by looking in a mirror and saying, man, my stomach's pudgy, my chest looks dumb, things like that. Things like that.
So, would your description of body dysmorphia be more along the lines of a distorted imagery of your physical appearance? Would that be based on weight? Do you think that you're ugly? Do you think that you're fat? How does this show up for you?
Definitely distortion, and definitely the fat. I'm not really too one to think that I'm ugly per se, but I definitely the weight is the number one issue, and the mirror will like just your mind will tell you like, oh wow. And then the goofy part of it all is I will look myself in the mirror directly, like face forward, and then look at myself in the mirror from the side and be like, man, I look good. So it's like that. It's that like
Mm.
it's just it's confusing. It's very confusing. It's a mind game that's hard to overcome.
So, you said that you experience these things quite frequently. So, is there any time when you do not have these feelings of negative body image and seeing distorted reality of what you are?
Oh yeah, of course. It's like everyone else that is stuck with these obsessions. I'll go swim 2,000 yards and then I automatically feel better. But the next day I can say I feel like a fat pig. So it's like,
Mm.
wait a minute. Whoa, like how did I go from feeling like an all-star swimming 2,000 yards wearing a speedo, and then I go up in the mirror and I destroy myself.
Mm.
That's the game. Like that's part of the game. And then of course, like we talk about, you automatically get paranoid as well. You think everyone's looking at you. You think everyone's laughing at you, which like someone told me years ago, 99% of people don't even care. Your mind's telling you that they care. You're never gonna see these people again, most likely. Like I said, 2,000 yards. I'm Mr. Superman. I look good. I look solid. Blah blah blah. Then as soon as I get home and look at myself in the mirror, it's like, oh, okay, that looks weird or off or odd or Like, why can't I lose weight? Why can't I look like this person or that person? And maybe that might be another thing too. We're so constantly bombarded with like images of guys with six packs and big muscles, and it's like half of that stuff is fake. That's another big one to accept, is that's not true. That's like like not even 1% of the population. So it's just a matter of having to just get out there and just try to find things that make you feel better, and don't sit around, don't try to sit in the pity, I guess.
So, from what you're telling me, it sounds like there's certain things that trigger you to kind of go off the deep end, and then there are other things that trigger you to feel more positive and happy about how you look.
Yeah, finding that balance is the issue. But I think, isn't that life in general? Like, everything about us is a balance. Mental health, physical health, even spiritual health. It's all about balance. You can't obsess too much over one thing, and that's where I've always had an issue. Like when I was in the army, for instance, I weighed 165 pounds at my smallest, and I still thought I was the fattest freaking person there. It's just crazy how the human mind works and how easily it can break you down. It's a very strong entity that we have within us, keeping it under control. And especially when you grow up with people that, one, abuse you, or two, they're depressed, or they feel they're ugly, or they feel they're fat. Like, that's all you see and hear. You're gonna, monkey see, monkey do. If I'm an addict, it's just saying, hey, if you go into a barbershop, you're gonna get a haircut. So it's also a matter of like just finding other positive people. If I'm hanging out with the people that are going to drag me down, clearly I'm going to go down with them eventually. And also the fact you can't help others, you have to just worry about yourself. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. You come first. That's also been a big one for me.
A little bit back on what you said about monkey see, monkey do. There's a term in psychology called mirroring, and this is a very popular term in the aspect of raising children, and they mirror behaviors and actions that they see, and they are able to facilitate those same things because of mirroring. So do you feel like hanging out with people who are negative either towards themselves or towards you had an impact on how you feel about your body and your weight back then, even today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my mom wasn't ever a big person, but she definitely was depressed. That much I can say. We'll just give a good example. Like, some people I used to hang out with, no matter what was said, there was just always a negative connotation to everything. And eventually I found myself falling into that same cycle. I have friends that are all slim, they're good looking, they run, they eat well, or so-called eat well. Could just be genetics for most of them, but when I surround myself with them, I feel good about myself. Like you're talking about the mirroring, then specific people that I live with, they were just so negative about themselves, like, and then I eventually started dragging myself down with them, even though like at the same time I'd go hang out with these people and it would be a completely different mirroring. So yeah, mirroring's a real thing. It definitely has messed me up. Whoever you hang out with is going to make a big deal and impact in your life. That's all I can say about it.
It definitely impacts our internal environment and how we speak to ourselves, because they say that you're an average of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. And if you're hanging out with people who are negative, either towards themselves or others or even you, then that's going to rub off on you, and it's going to reflect on how you feel about yourself and how you feel about others. So that's why it's so important to hang out with people who are positive in your life rather than people who are bringing others down or just being negative, pessimistic people in general. And as far as the distortions that you see, how do you know that what you see is distorted?
Well, like I said, it took me almost like my whole life to figure it out. I would say, when did I start noticing it was a distortion? Probably about a year ago when I was 37. And I kind of put two and two together finally that it is in my head. It's that it was tough. It was tough to like overcome and tough to deal with. And it was just very aggressive, very, very aggressive distortion. And also, I was just tearing myself up. I was reinforcing everything that the mirror was telling me. I was like, man, I am kind of goofy looking, as far as like weight and body looks, not my face per se, but like, why do I wear this and why do I wear that? Like, I'm just, who am I kidding? Who am I joking? Or who am I, just things like that. It's sad. It's sad that we're all suffering from like these kind of things, but we're just bombarded with all this negativity all the time. And we're supposed to look like this person and look like that person. And you have to just basically understand that you have to do what's good for your body.
So, how were you able to put two and two together that what you were seeing was distorted? Did you have someone approach you and tell you that what you were seeing was distorted, or how did that come about?
It was just a self-realization, and then of course, hanging out with yourself. You're into the psychology realm. It took me a while. I can't really exactly say what changed me. I would just say it was finally you get fed up of being fed up, or
Hmm.
you just live with it. And I think I got fed up with getting fed up. And then, of course, finally getting a gym membership and actually applying myself to it and lifting weights. And that's another thing, too. We get told to do cardio, 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 run, 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 run as fast as lift as heavy as you can. Everyone is different. One person can lift 200 pounds and the other person can run 3 miles. We're not the same. No matter how much we try, no matter how much society tries, none of us will ever be the same. And then it comes to that point too, even the clothing that we wear. You wear baggy clothing, you look bigger, you start to like tear yourself up. Or then you wear like clothing that's too tight or quote unquote form fitting and you start to beat yourself up. And it's like, holy crap, like everything around us is literally meant to like destroy us. It's sad. And anytime you try to be positive, you get chopped down. So you kind of just stop caring.
Yeah, it seems like the way that society is ran is very aesthetics based rather than actually focused on real health. And this is something that I notice so much in the health and fitness community, especially like the fitness community with like CrossFit and other places that are just really high intensity exercises. There's no emphasis on taking care of your body the way that it was meant to be taken care of. And it's very based on let's change your body. Let's change the way that this looks. And if you have a little bit of stomach fat, like that's the end of the world. It's the most disgusting thing ever that you have to change. And, that goes back to what you're saying about how when you look a certain way or you're being told these things, it makes you feel like you're not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, next question would be how does this affect your life? Like, does this affect the food that you eat, what you wear? I know you said like baggy clothes can be a trigger as well, or even just how you perceive yourself. So, what are some of the main things that this impacts?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I would say for my impact, I get depressed. I start to get very down on myself. I start beating myself up. I won't avoid food per se, but I'll start having to justify eating this or eating that. And then you come to realize once again, you find to realize it's the food that's inflaming us. Unless you, of course you eat a bunch of you eat a whole box of spaghetti, clearly you're gonna get bigger. You're gonna gain weight. It's just obvious. But like, are you eating spaghetti that's processed with like BS or actual like grain? And that's the thing too. Everything that we put it like anything that's accessible for us is literally making us inflamed. And that's another thing too. That's another thing I noticed. That was a big one that really hit me is when I realized that we're not quote unquote fat. Well, some people are, but we're quote unquote inflamed. Like it's inflammation. I feel like I noticed I don't know how to explain this. I'm so sorry, but it just came out now that inflammation I feel is what plagues all of us, most of us. Especially like you look at people and you're like, how is this possible? But then you see the food they're eating and it's like 150 ingredients in one like meal, and it's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be eating this. But honestly, now that it's I'm glad that this is coming up now. It's the food, because once I change like if I go into Whole Foods and buy some chicken tenders, like I won't feel super like bloated or inflamed. It's been years, but chicken nuggets at McDonald's, like I automatically felt fat. I don't know why, if it was a psychological thing or it was the inflammation. I don't know. I can't tell you. And then of course the fact that we overeat because it's so easy. It's so easy to get 20 chicken nuggets. It's so easy to get 3 burgers. They're like little,
Yeah.
there's soy.
And there's chemicals in there that make you want more. There's nothing in there that's going to provide you a satiety. So it's just you eat and eat and eat, and you don't realize that you're full already.
And then the fact that like, we make more like home cooked meals. I don't need as much. And that's another psychological game. I'm like, oh wow, like I'm full right now. I only had a bowl of, this beef stew and I'm full. That's the difference. That's what I'm getting at versus getting a can of beef stew of Campbell's or whatever. And you eat like 3 cans of it. You're like, man, I'm still hungry. That's what's making us overweight. That's what's making us inflamed. That's what's making us not understand that like we're being attacked constantly with from external sources. And that's why I'm here today because I'm getting fed up. We're getting blamed for us getting put stuff in our mouth, but like, I mean, come on, how many people actually have access to it though? So my journey specifically, I would say if now that we're like kind of narrowing it down, is when I started eating. I don't want to say better because we've been trying to eat better for the last however long since my cancer, but like we still slacked. Like we didn't really start hammering down until like 2 years ago, maybe. I want to say like crock pots, making our own food, like. And then another thing that really is annoys me, and you know this one, going to people's houses and people getting offended because you don't want to eat their food that they cook or they buy.
God,
You're like,
that's
wait
the
a minute.
That's
It's like
the worst.
like wait a minute. Like I'm trying to like let you know like I don't want that. It makes you feel sick. Oh, just eat a little bit. It won't hurt
Oh
you.
God. Or they expect you to like cook a big meal for them and you're like, okay, well I'll cook for you. And then like they cook for you like in return and it's like the most atrocious meal. And it's like they don't know any better, but it's like, I don't want to eat that.
And then of course that's what also annoys me is that why does food have to be snobby? So the farmer that eats a home cooked meal that they slaughter their own cow, is that snobby?
Mm-hmm.
Like how is that snobby?
It's the psychological aspect of it and how big food has literally taken over. Like
Yeah.
if you eat real food, then you're some kind of prissy snob who's a yuppie and you can't do anything other than that. But then like it's totally normal to just eat this disgusting food with a bunch of chemicals in it and feed this poison to your children. But it's like these people don't even realize it. They don't realize how dangerous and toxic these foods are.
And here's one thing I want to add before we can move on, and this is a big one. Fast food does not discriminate against race, gender, or class. When I was a kid, the rich kids were eating McDonald's. When you were a kid, you probably saw the same thing. Everyone was eating it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone. There was no one that was safe from it unless there was that active parent, which was very rare. And it probably took that parent having to suffer through something too. And that's what makes me so sad. And then the kids nowadays, you see them and they're so obese. They're just inflamed. Like, I don't even want to say obesity. Yeah, I get they weigh a lot, but look at the stuff that we're eating.
It's all just made in the lab. And no, I mean, you're absolutely right because inflammation is one of the biggest drivers of all illnesses. So obesity and inflammation.
And then another one too is sugar, and not necessarily a candy bar. Because for me to join the army, I had to lose 20 pounds. All right. I literally ran 2 miles every day, regardless of how tired I was. And I drank nothing but water. I stopped drinking soda. And I lost 20 pounds immediately. Come on. We drink soda on top of eat inflammatory meals. And we're wondering why kids are acting crazy. People are acting we're going haywire. Like our minds are not meant to have all these chemicals in them.
These parents, they feed their kids cereals and they think it's the healthy option, which is so heartbreakingly sad. And they don't realize that it's filled with glyphosate and all of this sugar. And, you know, they'll tell their kid like, well, you know, you have to eat all your cereal before you get this, what is it? Like the Eggo or the candy bar after your cereal. And it's like, there's no nutrition in any of that. You're literally just telling your child, eat this sugar before you can have more sugar, rather than like, here's some eggs and milk, and then you can have a little bit of fruit on the side. Psychological warfare. That's all it is.
That's all it is. And that's why I'm here today, because it is a psychological war. And being at war with oneself, it's not good. It doesn't end anywhere good. You have to learn to like channel your energy. It's just sad because people overeat because they're sad. And there's no cap on any of it. You know, we can just go buy as much as we want. And I'm not saying we should have a cap. I'm just saying like we just have so much access to crap. That's it. That's all I can say. That's all I'm going to say about it. Like frozen pizzas, things like that.
There's no repercussions for any of these corporations. They can just sell people waste byproducts like vegetable oil and all kinds of other things that are not meant for human consumption, and they label it as heart healthy. These corporations just pay off like the ADA and they have all this money. So they pay these people off and pay these corporations off to say, hey, can you sponsor my food and say that it's healthy? And that's why typically the rule of thumb is like, if something is being advertised, especially heavily advertised, you probably should not be eating it.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that's sad too is people defend these corporations. Like I had a guy tell me that McDonald's is healthy because there's been scientific study on it. I'm like, okay, first off, if food needs to be scientifically studied, there probably is not good for you then. I'm sorry. How many scientific studies are there for mangoes on a tree? Not really. Come on, man. It's made in a lab.
And it's all
And you're
fabricated.
feeding this crap to your children. Like, and I think what makes me even mad is all these people that do have quote unquote good bodies or good upbringings, they all say the same common denominator. Oh, my mom fed me from the cow, or we got food from the farm, or we didn't have grocery stores that, did all this for us. And these are the people that now they're sticking up for these corporations. I'm like, wait a minute.
Psychological warfare. Psychological warfare.
It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We're just all against each other all the time.
Yeah. I mean, all these studies, like you were saying, like they're all fabricated. There's the file drawer problem where if a study does not meet the criteria or the agenda for what they want, they'll just put it back and it won't ever be published. It won't see the light of day. No one will even know that that study exists. This is very common in the realm of pharmaceuticals, especially if they have a study and it does not meet what they want it to say, they'll just file it away. And this is the same thing that goes for food studies and nutrition studies, is like the whole saturated fat causes heart disease bullshit. It's like, have you really looked into this study? Because there's a lot of lies and deceit with this study because it was done a long time ago and they did not actually do the study properly. They didn't take into consideration other lifestyle factors, the fact that they were consuming a lot of sugar at this point, and they just point the finger at red meat and they say that red meat's carcinogenic and all this stuff. But it's like, okay, well, what are you replacing that with? Especially now in 2024 with lab grown meat and all of this other really freaky stuff that's going on. And by the way, if you don't know, lab grown meat is made with cancer cells.
Mm-hmm.
So just another reason why you should not be eating that. You cannot replicate nature. I am a big believer in God's divine plan, and what he has done for this planet is the way that it is intended to be. And the more that we deviate from nature and the more that we try to change it, the worse outcomes that there are going to be.
And this is probably separate from body dysmorphia. But you remember when we were kids? I swear to God, everyone did this. They went and got a Sprite for us, or Dr. Pepper, or ginger ale. I'm like, this is all carbonated sugar. Like, now that I look about it, like, we should not have been drinking that when we were sick. And it was making us more sick.
Oh, with illnesses,
yeah, when we
yes,
were getting
instead
sick.
of like chicken soup, or they would give you like the canned soup and think that it's like super healthy. And then, now we're adults and I'm like, oh my God, there was so much BPA and chemicals and just preservatives.
And one thing I'm sick,
crazy.
and I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there right now, and I don't care if anyone gets offended, but I'm sick of parents using them having to work for us to have a place to live as an excuse for them to not educate themselves, because that's BS. They can sure as heck do anything else that they wanted to do in life, cars, vacations, or just wasting money on BS. And it's like, no, no. A lot of parents literally let the corporations take us from them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just letting the state take your children and just basically have control over,
Yeah.
your kids. And, if you have time to sit down and binge watch Netflix or even watch an hour of a show or
Mhm.
scroll through Instagram or whatever social media platform, you have time to educate yourself. And this is why I'm seeing more and more parents really steering away from this, which is
Mhm.
fantastic. They're starting to pull their kids out of school and homeschooling them and actually teaching their children things that matter, rather than just standardized education that has gotten worse and worse over the past several decades. I mean, you look at the literacy rates and how much they continue to drop. It's like, clearly kids really are not learning that much in public schools.
And that's another thing too. You're completely correct. Education. And come on, the food pyramid. That's what we get. That's what we have access to, is the food
Yeah.
pyramid. And then you look at the food, it's so skewed. And once again, there should be a balance. Meat, vegetable, not processed stuff,
Baloney.
not baloney. And then they pump us full of medication. There's always a medicine for something. There's a medicine to lose weight. There's a medicine to gain weight. No, all this stuff wrecks your system. And honestly, like when I got back from Iraq, they gave us Depakote. And yeah, I'm going to start using the names. I don't care who it offends. Depakote, sertraline, all the typical antidepressants that are out there. First off, they gave me Depakote for a traumatic brain injury. Me and like 3 other guys, we pretty much put for like 30 to 40 pounds on immediately. And then the whole time, and like once again, the army's a very big man place. oh, you fat piece of crap, you fat this, you fat that, like, why can't you lose weight? You're gonna get kicked out and blah blah blah. Well, that's great for the psyche.
Amen to that. And people are ready to hear these things when they're ready. And I'm sure there are going to be people that listen to this and it pisses them off to their core. Hearing about how corrupt the food system, because it's very easy to get stuck in what you've been told and the brainwashing that you've been led to believe your whole life. And it's very easy to get defensive over that because you use defense mechanisms to be able to protect yourself. And if you hear something that goes against the status quo and what you've always been told, it can trigger a response in you to get very defensive and aggressive about things, even. So, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, where you're saying like you don't want to basically help people that don't want help. You're not going to go out of your way to try to convince people these things because they're ready for it when they want it.
And now here's the next step, that we're gonna move on to, and we have to understand like there were a lot of factors to it, and I'm gonna be humble enough to say that a majority of it was my fault. But we're gonna talk about cancer now. Do we really have to get to the point where we're on a hospital bed crying for our moms in pain because you got parts of your kidney chopped out? That's what it took. That's what it's gonna take for me to. That's what it took for me to change. And even then, it took what? I'm 20. That happened when I was 29. I'm 38. Almost 9 years after the fact to finally unkink everything. The anger, the hatred for myself. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything. I lost everything that I could about myself to be able to like stay in shape and all that. And I just blew up. And I just felt like the last 9 years, I'm thinking, man, it took that to make me change. It took something that horrific, and I feel like a lot of people like a rude awakening is coming. And I don't want to say that. I don't wish that upon anyone. But there's only so much your body can take. And yes, we're putting crap into our bodies. Your body's gonna mutate. That's all cancer is, the mutation of your cells, and then put all the stuff that they have around us, estrogenic.
Mm-hmm.
For the men especially,
chemicals. Yeah. And no, this is something that I do want to have a future podcast episode with you about how what it took for you to change, because there's a lot of women out there who want their husbands to get on board with them. And I'm not saying like you are the most enthusiastic about health and wellness like I am. Like, no, you're your own person. You enjoy it and you like listening to me, but you're not going to go actively seek out all of these books like I do and, be super enthusiastic and want to learn all this stuff on your own. But you also do express interest in what I'm talking about, and you want to eat healthy and you want to avoid all of these chemicals, whereas a lot of women are having a very hard time getting their man on board with this because the man is still under this state of disillusion where he thinks that everything around him is okay. And just because he doesn't have all these weird sensitivities that women do, because women are generally more sensitive to this stuff, it's like we sneeze the wrong way one day and then we're constipated the next, whereas men can like not sleep for like 2 days and they can have like a normal bowel movement. But the fact of the matter is, like, I definitely want to bring you back on the podcast to talk about this because, like you mentioned, like it took something horrific for you to happen. And in order for a lot of men, like these are the things that must happen to them, unfortunately. But I'm sure there are ways to get the husband or the boyfriend or whatever more on board with this stuff. Because it is really interesting how you bring that up, that it did take you a while, because after your cancer, you were very willing to make a lot of different lifestyle changes. Like we made those changes very quickly and you were totally okay with those changes.
Yeah, and that's another thing too is now tying it back to body dysmorphia. As a man, me coming on here and talking about this, I could be seen as weak or a sissy, or you know what I mean? Only the women complain about body dysmorphia. Men can't have anorexia or body dysmorphia, or men can't have any of these diseases that kill women all the time because society bombards them with all this psychological crap. Men have it too.
Yeah.
And honestly, sometimes it's worse for the men.
Well, they're more likely to die of anorexia than women because they get diagnosed later because of the stigma.
And men, once again, like you just said, we're gonna push ourselves harder because we can do that. So when you're pushing yourself harder and you don't have anything in your system, you're just gonna have a heart attack one day. And I hate sounding horrible like this, but we're dumb. We don't listen until it's too late. And honestly, like we just talked about, it took me having to be on a hospital bed. And it's that who you hang out with. There's a lot to it. Because I'll find myself getting made fun of, like when I hang out with certain people. Oh, you're the healthiest person I know, or man, it doesn't matter if you eat this meat stick versus this meat stick, or the pork from Publix versus the pork's horrible now anyways. It's 99% from China. We'll go with beef. We'll buy beef at Publix and we get sick, and we just spend $2 more in at Whole Foods and we don't get sick. So something's clearly wrong there.
Absolutely. So, tying all this in for body dysmorphia, I guess to kind of wrap this up, is there anything that you've found that actually helps with the compulsive thoughts and the negative thoughts that crop up?
Definitely avoiding the scale. The scale is not our friend. It's just there to tell us like what we weigh at the time. You're not going to change weight from night and like today and tomorrow. If I weigh myself tomorrow, I'll be the same, almost the same amount, more or less, like 3 to 5 pounds. Okay, depending on water and what I ate. But like, I feel like our mind literally has us convinced that like we're just going to lose weight overnight. No, this process takes years. And when I mean years, I'm not exaggerating the years part. Like you might as well just get in the seat and just wait. Don't go on a scale. Avoid the mirror as much as possible, just to brush your teeth, of course, and all that fun stuff. But like, I would say avoidance, and then of course non-inflammatory foods, meaning you got to actually go out there and make an effort to read labels. I remember I went to Sealy, Texas. All right, Sealy is literally deep in the heart of it. Like, it's out there. And I remember sitting at Walmart trying reading labels. I forgot what I was looking for. Bacon. Yeah, I was looking for bacon. Long story short, I finally found the bacon that was the right one, but it was like hidden in the corner. I literally read every one of them, and none of them were. That one was like somewhat okay. And this is what people have access to.
Well, even when we go buy dog food, like, because we feed our dogs raw, and I'll get some things there, like oysters and like canned sardines and stuff, and like I'll turn over the packages to like look where they're from. Even like the pumpkin puree, all of it is from China. Mm-hmm. All of it. Yeah. So I'll try to find some that's from like for the canned salmon, like I'll look for wild caught from like Alaskan waters, Korea for the sardines and stuff. But it's like everything is from China. And it's like, if you look at their food standards, like heavy metals and pesticides and the foods that they use and the dyes that they use. And it's crazy. And I'm sorry, we're getting off topic here, but
just remember, it takes time. Weight loss or weight gain or any of it, like it's not going to happen overnight unless you go there every day, and most likely you're going to injure yourself. That's the only way you're really going to see any kind of difference. But even then, like we always talk about skinny fat, you can't outwork a bad diet. If you're going out and eating a bunch of McDonald's and then you go lift, most people are just relying on youth and genetics. But that one time you get injured, you're going to blow up.
Mm-hmm. Well, people don't realize there's a lot more to weight loss, like the chemicals that we use, how much sunlight exposure that we're getting, the quality of your food. And it's like you said, it takes time, and you can't push yourself so much because you're going to screw your metabolism up.
And avoid things that trigger you. I know that sounds easy, but I haven't touched the scale. Even at the gym, I'll literally weigh myself every other time I'm there, which is what we're there 3 to 5 times a week sometimes. And sometimes I'll find myself getting mad because like the number didn't go down. I'm like, I should know this already. Mm-hmm. Like it's not going to go down. And here's even the bigger mind game. The fact that like, when we first started working out, I went down to 185 temporarily, and then we started lifting a lot of weights and swimming and stuff, and it went back to 195. I'm not saying that I'm a Mr. Muscular, but yes, fat and muscle are 2 different weights. One has more mass than the other. So yes, you will gain weight if you start lifting weights, but that can throw someone off.
Yeah.
You got to remember, people like us, we see a distortion in a mirror, and that's it. Like there's nothing that's going to change that mirage. Like it's just going to be the same. That's why you have to like not look at the mirror and avoid the scale, or have a way to come to terms of peace with yourself that like it's just a mirror. There's no power behind it. I guess that's the big mind game, and that's the best advice I can give for the time being. In the initial stages is just avoidance. Just go in the gym and work out. Don't even look in the mirror. Don't look at the scale. Just go in there, work out. If that's what you want to do to lose weight, of course. I'm just giving an example. Avoidance is that's the best advice I can give anyone. And time, just time. And avoid people that make you feel horrible about yourself. That's another big one, because people will drag you down, whether they're trying to be mean, whether they're trying to be nice. You don't even know. You're never going to know people's true intentions, because no one can ever tell you the truth up front. But most time people are trying to drag you down with them. And I've learned that the hard way, because they feel ugly about themselves or insecure about themselves. So they're going to make me feel insecure about myself. So avoidance, avoid.
And back to the whole body dysmorphia and the mirror aspect, and how you said that your mind gives power to it. So this is something that I noticed very strongly when I had anorexia, when I was a very young teenager, is I would look in the mirror and I would be, looking back at photos now, like I was rail thin, like I looked horrible. I was on the brink of death. And back then I just saw this grotesquely obese woman. It was like nothing was ever good enough. And one thing that really helped me was just going to therapy and figuring out what the root cause of this body dysmorphia and where it comes from. So maybe you had a mother who was always dieting and talking bad about herself, or you were bullied and people always said negative things about your body or just how you looked in general or anything about you. So it's like there's always a root cause to this and where it comes from, and just really working through that and taking the power away from those, the critics who have said things, and also your inner critic, because your inner critic, I feel like it's going to be very strong when body dysmorphia is present. And these are the things that we have to disempower and bring the power back to us. Because if we empower these mean, evil thoughts to take over and to just let them run rampant, like we are going to just create our own demise internally.
Yep, absolutely. And then, of course, just watching what you eat. And I don't mean like going on a full-fledged diet. That's not what we're talking about. They're called, what do we call them? Life changes?
Yeah, just a whole foods, nutrient-dense nutrition.
It's about changing your life, not about diet. Diet, I feel, is very temporary. Like, if, a boxer goes on a diet to make weight, swimmers go on diets to make weight. Like, that's something completely different. We need to understand it's a lifestyle change. It's a matter of going to Whole Foods or going to McDonald's. What are you going to choose?
Yeah.
It's down to the individual at the end of the day, what you're going to be willing to spend money on. And then on top of that, you got to remember too, and this is another big one. We're probably talking about dieting and food and money now. It's probably far from the body dysmorphia, but like the fact that we have to understand that like we're spending the same amount of money no matter what. There's a psychological part that people don't understand. When I was single, living by myself, I probably spent more by myself on me, on crap, than me buying all the groceries for my wife and dogs, going to Whole Foods and all these fancy places that everyone wants to talk, mess about. I probably saved $300 a month now. That's for 2 people and 2 dogs.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse. If you're going to go out there and buy alcohol, and that's what I tell everyone. I used to go out there and buy alcohol and just BS food. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. Like I'm making excuses for my crappy behavior, and that's another problem too. You can't justify your crappy behavior.
You have to own up for what
you're doing. You have to own up, and we're all spending money on things that don't matter. You can go ahead and buy yourself some decent food, and actually, taste better too. Like,
well, we opt out of a lot of things that like our peers do. Like, we don't go on like super luxurious vacations and like stay at all these nice fancy hotels and go to Disney World, or we don't buy all the new gizmos and gadgets and electronics, and we don't have like a ton of subscriptions every month, or go buy coffees, every single day. Because if you buy a coffee for $3, or I don't think coffee's that cheap anymore. I think it's like $7 now per cup. It adds up. And that goes back to the excuses, that money that you are wasting at these places, you can reinvest that back into healthy food to cook on your own time.
And then on top of that, we need to stop sticking up for these corporations. Like, people make it sound like these corporations are bringing God to us. Like, they don't care about us. Okay, if it was that good, why do people have to go back for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Addiction.
You're spending $9, $10, $12, $15 a meal? Come on.
And it's so inhumane, like how they treat the workers, how they treat the animals, how they slaughter the animals. It's just the energy around it is just so disgusting.
And that's considered superior, like a first world mentality of like, this is the best thing in the world. No, like, people in poorer countries are better off physically. Like, I get they don't have what we have. They don't have like all these technologies and gizmos that we have today to make our life easier. But like, at the end of the day, what is easier? Dying on a hospital bed
with your leg getting cut off from diabetes, or dying of old age, or...
So back to body dysmorphia, like literally it's just you have to watch what you eat. And remember, your brain is going to go haywire when you put foods or drinks that are like just pure sugar, for instance, like Coca-Cola. And I'm not even talking about the weight at this point. Your brain is literally going to go haywire. Like that's why all these kids are hyper and obese. I'm like, you're giving them sugar for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Remember your one friend, his kid asked you if he could eat what you were eating because you're eating like spaghetti squash and it was home cooked and he was eating like Chef Boyardee and he looked at your food and he's like, that looks so good. Can I have that? And that goes to show you like kids want real food. And you know, what we tell women and pregnant women, especially like what to eat during pregnancy and what to avoid. It's like we tell them to avoid like shrimp and raw milk and undercooked egg yolks. And it's like these have the most bioavailable nutrients for the human body and for a developing fetus. So it's like what we're being told, and that goes back to the whole education system of everything. It's like our education system is such crap that we are basically just lying to people. And the food pyramid is paid off by these corporations that people stick up for because they want to get into people's minds to be able to create this disillusion to make us believe things that are false.
And I think that's what's another messed up thing is like, I get ridiculed because like, I'm officially over the whole chasing money. All right. That's literally what the majority of people are after, especially in the first world countries. I am at the point where I'd rather just have good food. I mean, of course, it's good to get ahead, but like, I'm sick of chasing the dollar. And that's what's killing us. That's what's killing us. You know, they say, go buy one and get one free ramen noodle soup. Or get 10 of them for like $1. How do you think that's going to affect you later on in life? It's plastic.
I mean, everyone's pineal gland has been calcified from all the fluoride in the water. I mean, it's like your ability to be open-minded and think freely is literally cut off. It's severed because you need that to be able to come to a spiritual awakening. And that's where it comes down to people going through something horrible. Like both Lewis and I, we've both gone through some very horrific things with our health. And that's why we are where we are at. And I hope that the change comes in the very near future where people just start to wake up before they start to experiencing horrific health problems, because it is not something I want anyone to experience.
Like as a historian, I study a lot, and someone, a farmer once commented during the Great Depression, he was being interviewed. The reporter asked him, how did you survive all this? And he goes, how many farmers do you see jumping off of buildings because they can't get money? None. They all eat still. And that's what I'm going back to what I said earlier. We're demonizing these dirty farmers. Have we gone to see where the hell Publix has their milk stored? Have we seen it physically? Like, and that's what I try to tell people. Seeing is believing. If we took majority of people through a walk through this shit, they probably wouldn't do it again.
No, I mean, the slaughterhouses and where we, even our produce, like they gas it and they put chlorine on it and all these chemicals, like it is disgusting what we are putting into our bodies. And this is why I'm a huge advocate for growing your own food or going to farmers markets.
And like the vegetables that don't rot, how is that normal?
Oh my God, yeah, I bought some cherries from like Trader Joe's, and cherries usually rot within like 5 days? Yeah. I had them for like 2 weeks in the fridge and like they didn't even rot. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be eating this.
So like I said, this isn't about changing anyone, it's just awareness. And people could take it or leave it, you know? We can be anti-vaxxers or whatever they want to call us, but I'm seeing people around me fall apart. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting older, and for some reason I'm getting stronger, and it's not an arrogance thing. I'm not out there lifting a lot. I'm not out there, you know, but I can feel the difference. I can see the difference.
Yeah. Even something as like, I don't want to say arbitrary, but like our dogs, for example, like our one dog, Juno, she was fed raw when she was like 2 years old. So she was kibble fed up until 2 years. She's a purebred. She's going to have more genetic health problems as well. But the fact of the matter is, our other dog, we got a puppy, and she started eating raw when she was, I believe, 4 months old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about 4 months.
3 or 4 months old. I mean, it is just incredible to see her abilities. And it's like, it goes to show you how important nutrition is.
And this is another thing too. You know, we're putting, I know we keep going away from body dysmorphia. I don't know. I guess I have a lot to talk about, but maybe another one we can add this one. You know, we talk about kids being obese and hyper, but you're giving them nothing but sugar, mm-hmm. McDonald's, and BS. Dakota, perfect example.
Yes.
Perfect example. That dog was hyper. Like when we first got her, she was eating kibble, and as soon as she went to raw, like there's something different about her. Like she changed.
It
like
was almost immediate.
She was like a series. Like she was not serious, but like like even more dedicated than
very
before.
Focused.
Focused,
very focused.
yeah.
And she didn't want the kibble. Like,
yeah,
she's one of the few dogs that I've ever seen in my life. But I've heard this is really common in the raw feeding community. But I personally have never seen it up until now. But we would feed Juno, the raw fed dog, who was about 3.5. And we would feed her raw, and then we would feed Dakota, the puppy, the kibble, and Dakota would just look at the food like, this isn't food. Like, please give me the raw meat. And I would feed her pieces of raw meat, and she would eat it instantly. And like, she would refuse to eat. She was getting skinny, and then we switched her over to raw, and it was like instant. Like, she was happier, she looked healthier, her coat was better. Like, she's been chill, like really calm, really focused. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a topic for another episode. Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to add about body dysmorphia before we wrap up?
Yeah, just forget what anyone has said to you negatively about yourself. Ignore it. I know it's easier said than done, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And remember, it isn't overnight. Anytime you want to actually make the decision to change something, it's going to probably take 10 years. Because you got to remember, if you were spending the last 20 years abusing yourself, you're probably going to be spending another 20 years fixing yourself. Just remember that. So the sooner you do it, the better, and hope to God you don't get sick beforehand. Like that slowed me down a lot. But God bless to everyone. I wish everyone the best. If you ever need anything, just reach out to Megan Garza Wellness.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing all of your insights. I know we got pretty off topic about a lot of things, but I feel like it all really does relate to body dysmorphia. And I'm really looking forward to having you back on the show as a guest for some different topics. Like you said, maybe some of the insights around men and how to get them more on board with their wives who are more crunchy and holistic. And then also just things about nutrition in general, because it's really interesting to have a different perspective of someone who's not as into it per se as I am, but someone who still really enjoys it as well. So again, I just want to thank you so much for coming on this podcast episode. I really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone else did too. I hope that you found it helpful. But lastly, just remember to take it step by step and to keep learning on your wonderful journey of wellness. Well, that's all the time that we have for. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. You can expect new episodes every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just a quick reminder again of how you can support the podcast and stay in the loop. You can sign up for my newsletter. That way you can be notified every time I post a new podcast episode, make any new announcements about my services and how you can work with me, and also receive weekly relevant tips for digestion and hormones so you can optimize your health. You can find the link to sign up for my newsletter in the show notes, or head to my website at megangarzawellness.com, and you can wait for the pop-up or sign up under the freebies tab. Again, I just want to thank you for listening to this week's topic. Take care, everyone, and until next time.